A final Christmas invitation arrives, and someone won't live to open it. Welcome to Mystery Parlor. I am your host, Axon. Share the mystery. Tell me where you're joining from today. Hearing from you always makes these tales even warmer. Now, into the story. If you live with Nero Wolfe long enough, you learn that a quiet morning in the brownstone is not a thing you get by accident. It's a thing you guard, like a bottle of brandy in a room full of cousins. You keep your elbows out, you keep the door locked, you keep Fritz happy, and you keep strangers on the stoop. So when the doorbell rang at 10:15 on a cold December Tuesday, and didn't ring like it meant to, I knew from the first long buzz that the day had already taken a bad turn. Wolfe was in the orchid rooms upstairs, where he claims the air is purer and the company less disappointing. I was in the office, feet on the corner of his desk, my privilege, not his, and trying to decide whether the new issue of the New Yorker was better company than a second cup of coffee. The bell buzzed again. Whoever it was had a finger like a tax collector. I got up, went to the hall, opened the front door the proper 2 inches, far enough to talk, not far enough to regret it, and looked at a man who had dressed for December in a way that suggested he hadn't been outside since October. He was tall and careful-looking, in a charcoal overcoat that probably cost more than my first car, and a scarf knotted exactly the way a scarf gets knotted in advertisements. His hat was in his hand, not because he was polite, but because he was thinking about it. He had the kind of face that never learned to relax. Narrow, clean, and tense around the mouth, like it had been trained to say no first. "Mr. Goodwin?" he asked. That was strike one. The only people who know my name at 10:15 are people who shouldn't be ringing our bell. "Maybe," I said, "depending on what you're selling and whether it's legal." "I'm not selling anything." He glanced past me into the hall, trying to see the inside of Wolfe's home without earning the right. That was strike two. "Then you're in the wrong line of work," I told him. "Who are you and why are you buzzing my eardrum?" He looked at me for a beat like he was deciding if I was a receptionist or a booby trap. Finally, he said, "My name is Theodore Ted Hallowell. I need to speak with Nero Wolfe. It's about an invitation." I opened the door another inch. "To what? A garden party? An execution? The last time someone came here about an invitation, it was for a lecture and it cost us an afternoon." He didn't smile. The mouth didn't know how. "It's a Christmas invitation." That was strike 3 and 4 at once. Wolfe's relationship with Christmas is like his relationship with raw onions. He understands some people like it, but he thinks they should keep it in their own rooms. "Ah," I said, "then you're definitely in the wrong house. Mr. Wolfe is allergic to tinsel." "It's not for him," Hallowell said quickly. "It's for me, and I need his help." "Everybody needs his help," I said. "That's why his fee starts at a number. You can't say without paying rent on it. Come in before you freeze to my stoop, and take your hat off again when you remember what manners are." He stepped in. The hall light landed on him and made him look paler, which I didn't think was possible. He was around 45, give or take a bad year, and he had the quiet, expensive smell of city money. Not perfume, confidence. The kind you wash with. I closed the door and headed toward the office. He followed, taking in the house with a look that was half curiosity and half dread, like he'd been told the brownstone once ate a man alive. In the office, I motioned him to the red leather chair opposite Wolfe's desk. He sat as if he expected springs to explode. I went behind the desk and sat down in Wolfe's chair because it's the only way to make people remember who runs the room while Wolfe is upstairs babysitting orchids. "Okay, Mr. Hallowell." I crossed my legs, which is a trick I've got to look casual even when I'm not. "You've got 10 minutes before I decide you're either crazy or boring. Start rolling." He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. Not a letter, an envelope. Cream-colored, thick, the kind you could build a small boat out of. The flap was sealed. On the back, centered and impressed, was a small red wax seal with a design I didn't recognize. On the front, in elegant black script, was Mr. Theodore Hallowell, 118. East 73rd Street, New York City. I've seen handwriting that tries to be old-fashioned. This one didn't try. It simply was. I felt a small prick of interest. It's a rare commodity in our line. He set it on the desk as if it might go off. I received that yesterday afternoon, delivered by hand. From who? That's the thing. He swallowed. There's no return address, and there's no signature inside. What's inside? He tapped the envelope lightly with one finger. An invitation to a Christmas Eve dinner. The host is not named. The location is named, the date, the time, an insistence on formal dress, and one line at the bottom. Which says? He looked at me like the carpet might be listening. It says, "You will come because you already have." I leaned back a couple inches. Not because I was scared, because you can't lean any farther in Wolfe's chair without falling into the bookcase. The line was melodrama, sure, but it was melodrama with teeth. Okay, it's cute. I nodded at the envelope. What's the location? That's another problem. His voice went a shade lower. It's a private townhouse. Not mine. Not anyone I know openly, anyway. The address is 49 West 11th Street. What's there? A brownstone. Belongs to the Greer Foundation. I blinked. If you live in New York long enough, you pick up names the way you pick up coals. The Greer Foundation was a charity outfit with a clean public face and a private reputation for making the rich richer while pretending to rescue puppies. Why would they invite you? I asked. They wouldn't. Not officially. I resigned as their treasurer 6 months ago. Resigned on good terms. He did the mouth thing again, tightening it so the answer had to fight its way out. No. So they're trying to lure you into a festive ambush. He didn't like that word. They're trying to frighten me, or trap me, or... He stopped, and for the first time I saw something besides tension on his face. Something tired. Or they already did, I said softly. His eyes flicked to me. What did you say? I nodded toward the line he'd quoted. You will come, because you already have. That kind of talk usually means blackmail, regret, or both. You want to tell me which? He pressed his palms to his knees. They were steady. That told me something. He was either very brave or very practiced. 3 years ago, he said, I attended a Christmas Eve dinner at that house. Whose dinner? He shook his head. That's what I'm saying. I don't know who hosted it. Well, that's a neat trick. I've been to dinners I didn't enjoy, but I always knew whose wine I was drinking. It was not a normal dinner, Mr. Goodwin. It was a gathering of people with obligations to the Greer Foundation. Donors, officers, trustees. There were no cameras, no press. A private evening. I was invited because I handled certain financial arrangements. Arrangements like which? He hesitated. I let him. Silence is a crowbar if you know how to use it. Like moving money, he said finally, from one account to another, making sure a pledge looked like a gift instead of a loan, ensuring that grants went to the right partners. Partners meaning the guys who already owned the building you were renovating. He flinched. Not much. Enough. All right, I said. So you were the grease in their gears, and then you quit, and now someone wants you to show up in a tux on Christmas Eve to what? Get your throat cut over eggnog. I don't think they want to kill me. He said it like he'd rehearsed it with a lawyer. Not physically. Then what's the problem? He stared at the envelope again, and I got the feeling he hated paper. He said, because I don't remember that dinner. That got me right behind the ribs. I've heard a lot of things in Wolfe's office. Confessions, alibis, threats, seances, spontaneous conversions to religion. But I don't remember, is a sentence that always comes with a shadow attached. You don't remember it at all? I remember arriving. I remember the foyer, marble with a green runner. I remember the smell. It was like cloves and something burnt. I remember a woman in a red dress taking my coat. After that, he looked up at me, and his eyes were suddenly honest, which is a low-frequency earthquake. Nothing until the next morning. Hangover? No, I don't drink much. I had one glass of champagne. I was driving. I remember leaving my car in a private garage on Charles Street. I remember walking to the house. I do not remember leaving. Did anyone tell you what happened? Yes. People made jokes about it afterward. How I gave a speech when I was supposed to be discreet. How I toasted someone I disliked. How I seemed emotional. He swallowed, and there it was. Fear, not of punishment, but of being made ridiculous. But when I asked for details, they became evasive. Maybe you danced on the table, I said lightly. Rich people get squeamish about the furniture. He didn't bite. Mr. Goodwin, I found something the next day. What kind of something? An envelope in my coat pocket. His voice rasped. Not this one. The other one. It was addressed to me in the same handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a list of bank account numbers. Offshore, European, and a note at the bottom. What did that note say? He closed his eyes once, like he could still see it behind his eyelids. It said, "Thank you for your loyalty. We will require it again." I whistled softly. That's not seasonal. I reported it to no one. I burned it that day. I told myself I'd been drunk, that I'd hallucinated. But 6 months later, I resigned. And now this. He touched the new envelope with 2 fingers, as if it were cold iron. I can't go to that house again without knowing what happened there the first time. I can't refuse to go without knowing what they can do to me, because I don't know what I did. There was a nice clean panic in his voice now, the kind that doesn't scream. That's when I believed him. If he were faking, he'd have picked the dramatic gear earlier. All right, I said. So why come to Wolfe? Why not the cops, or a priest with a good memory? He almost smiled at the priest line. Almost. Because I don't want this public, not yet. And because I know Mr. Wolfe's reputation, he solves what others can't without advertising it. He respects discretion. Sometimes he respects it for a fee, I said. Have you got one? Yes. No hesitation, and I will pay any amount he requires. Careful, I advised. He likes to take that as a personal challenge. I picked up the envelope, turned it over. The wax seal had a little relief in it. Not a crest exactly, but a stylized letter, maybe a G, maybe a looped S. I'd seen fancier, but I hadn't seen this. I slid a letter opener under the flap. Hallowell tensed like I was opening his ribs. Relax, I told him. It's ours now. Inside was a card, matching paper, and a single sheet folded once. The card was blank, except for the same black script. You are cordially invited to a Christmas Eve supper at 49 West 11th Street, 8 p.m. Black tie, required. No host, no RSVP, no holiday flourishes, just a summons dressed up as good manners. Below it, centered on the page, was the line he'd quoted. You will come because you already have. I read it twice, because I'm stubborn that way, then set it down and looked at him. Okay, I said. That's creepy in a tasteful font. Anything else in there? No. And you didn't show it to anyone before now? No. You didn't ask the Greer Foundation if they were throwing a party? No. I haven't been in contact with them since I left. They would deny it anyway, or worse. Worse how? He said quietly. They might welcome me. Fair. I drummed my fingers on Wolfe's desk. I could already hear him downstairs in my head, grumbling that no case is worth missing an hour in the plant rooms, especially not one that smells like charity money in Christmas. But that line, because you already have, had hooks, It promised a past debt and maybe a past crime. Wolfe hates being manipulated, and he loves a puzzle. And a puzzle that dared to walk into his office uninvited was a puzzle that might keep him awake through dinner. That's about as close to excitement as Wolfe gets. "Where were you yesterday afternoon when it was delivered?" I asked. "In my office. 2 men brought it. They were not messengers in any ordinary sense. They wore dark suits and didn't speak. One set it on my desk and left. You get a look at them. Not well, average height, gloves, no accents I heard. They were gone in seconds. Your office building have a doorman? Cameras?" "Yes," I asked. The doorman said they looked like businessmen. The cameras were not working, a maintenance issue. He said it without irony, which meant he'd already passed through irony and come out the other side. Of course they were. He leaned forward. "Mr. Goodwin." "Yeah?" "I want your employer to take this case." I nodded slowly. "That's not how it works. Wolfe doesn't take cases because people want him to. He takes them because he wants to. Then make him want it." His voice sharpened. "Desperation is a good whetstone. Tell him whatever you must. Offer him whatever he asks. I cannot live like this for another month. Christmas Eve is in 11 days. There are 2 sounds in the brownstone that mean more trouble than they should. The doorbell and Wolfe's footsteps on the stairs. I heard the second one now. Heavy, deliberate, offended by gravity. He had finished with the orchids or decided the orchids could fend for themselves. I got up, because you don't sit in Wolfe's chair when Wolfe is in the room unless you want a lecture on hierarchy. The door from the hall opened, and he came in, large as a jurist and twice as unimpressed. He wore his usual morning uniform, yellow silk pajama top under a brown vest, one eyebrow already lifted at the sight of Hallowell. "Archie." His voice was dry enough to sand a floor. "You have admitted someone." "Yep." "Why?" "Because he buzzed like a fire alarm, and I got curious. This is Mr. Theodore Hallowell. He brought an invitation, not the kind Fritz sends." Wolfe's eyes moved to the envelope on his desk, to the card, to the sheet. They didn't linger on Hallowell, which is Wolfe's way of letting a man know he isn't interesting yet. "An invitation," Wolfe said. "How diverting. Mr. Hallowell, you have disturbed my morning for stationery." Hallowell stood. He'd probably never stood for a man in pajamas before, but he did it anyway. "Mr. Wolfe, I need your help." Wolfe sat behind the desk without looking at the chair to make sure it existed. He picked up the sheet, read it, and his mouth made the tiniest shift you'd never notice unless you'd spent years watching it for weather. "Black tie," he murmured. "Anonymity, imperative phrasing, and an assumption of compliance. It is an invitation in the same sense that a writ is an invitation." I said, "That's kind of the theme." Wolfe looked at me. "And the problem?" Hallowell started in again, this time with Wolfe's eyes on him. He did it carefully, because people get careful when they're talking to Wolfe. He told the story of the first dinner, the memory gap, the envelope in his pocket the next morning, the resignation, and the delivery yesterday. When he quoted the line, Wolfe's eyes went back to the paper. "You will come, because you already have," Wolfe repeated. A poor taunt, but effective. "It terrifies me," Hallowell said. Wolfe studied him for a moment. Not with sympathy. Wolfe doesn't do sympathy in the morning, but with appraisal. "Mr. Hallowell," Wolfe said, "there are elements here that required a careful hand and a considerable arrogance. You're not here because you have forgotten a dinner. Many people forget dinners. You are here because someone wishes to make you remember it in the manner he chooses." "Yes." "And because you suspect that memory contains something ruinous." "I don't know what it contains. That's the point." Wolfe's fingers rested on the paper. "Perhaps it contains nothing. Perhaps you were merely ill." Hallowell shook his head. "I was not ill. I was drugged, or hypnotized, or persuaded. Something happened that night, and they want me to belong to it again." Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. This was the first sign of actual engagement. "The Greer Foundation," he said. "You were its treasurer." "Yes. The Greer Foundation is a nest of vanity and money in search of laundries. I have declined their social overtures thrice. That's why I came to you. They won't be able to. Do not presume to tell me why you came." Wolfe turned the page over as if the back might suddenly become more interesting. "Archie, what day is it?" "Tuesday. You just missed a perfectly good opportunity not to ask a question." "What day is Christmas Eve?" "Wednesday, the 24th. And today is the 13th. Wolfe was doing arithmetic on his fingers in his head, which is a small spectacle. 11 days, Hallowell said quickly. "I can pay your fee, whatever it is. I need—" Wolfe held up a hand. Hallowell stopped the way men stop when a judge clears his throat. Money is not in itself a reason to accept an intrusion. Wolfe glanced at me. "You admitted him, Archie. Therefore, I assume there is something here besides a seasonal melodrama." "Yep," I said. "Two things. One, someone is trying to boss a man around with a line that sounds like it was written by a middle-aged cobra. Two, that cobra thinks it can schedule your Christmas like a dentist appointment." Wolfe looked at me, and I knew I'd hit the right nerve because his face went blanker. He turned back to Hallowell. "You will leave the papers?" "Of course. You will also leave your telephone number and the names of every person you recall seeing at that dinner 3 years ago, whether you can place them now or not." "I can do that." "Good." Wolfe set the invitation down with care, as if it were a specimen. "You will hear from Mr. Goodwin." Hallowell's shoulders sagged in relief. "Then you will take the case." Wolfe's eyes were mild and very cold. "I did not say so. I said you will hear from Mr. Goodwin. That is all I am prepared to promise at this time." "But—" Wolfe leaned back. "Mr. Hallowell, I despise coercion. I also despise Christmas. If someone believes he can employ one to impose the other on me, I am, at minimum, curious. That is not the same as consent." I saw Hallowell swallow frustration and settle for hope. He nodded. "I understand." He wrote down his number, listed names as best he could. 2 trustees, a donor couple, a woman he thought was on the board, and a tall man with white hair he only knew as Miles. The list was thin, and he knew it. When he left, he didn't look over his shoulder. That was a good sign or a bad one? I watched the door close, then came back to the office, shaking my head. Wolfe was staring at the invitation like it had insulted his mother in Latin. "Well?" I said. He said nothing for a full 10 seconds, which is Wolfe's way of giving an idea time to either bloom or die. Finally, he said, "Fritz will serve luncheon at 1. In the meantime, you will telephone Saul Panzer. Right now, we don't even have a case yet." "We have an intrusion," he said, "and a direct affront. I wish to know who owns that house, who occupies it, and who benefits from the Greer Foundation's Christmas hospitality. Saul can discover these things." I grinned. "So you're curious." "I'm offended." He adjusted an imaginary wrinkle on the paper. "Curiosity is merely a byproduct." "Sure." I picked up the card again and read the line once more. "You will come?" Wolfe's eyes lifted to me. "Archie." "Yeah?" "Bring me the Foundation's annual reports from the cabinet, and the old file on Greer, if we still have it." "We do. Because you never let me throw anything away that might be useful to your next grudge." He ignored that, which meant it was accurate. "Also," he added, "Christmas Eve is a Wednesday, as you say. I have not attended a dinner outside this house on Christmas Eve since 1934. Lucky them. I do not propose to begin now." I nodded. That was the first honest sentence he'd said all morning. "So we're taking the case," I said. Wolfe looked back down at the invitation. "We are not taking the case because Mr. Hallowell is frightened. We are taking it because someone has presumed to command obedience within my sphere by rhetoric and timing. I headed for the phone. "Okay, boss. I'll tell Saul we've got a Christmas party to crash without leaving the house." He rumbled, "You will tell Saul nothing of the sort. You will tell him precisely what I said." "Sure," I said, dialing already. "And I'll tell Santa I've been good." Wolfe didn't answer. He was still looking at the line on the page, and I could see the gears turning behind his eyes, slow and sharp and merciless. The brownstone had been handed a Christmas invitation that wasn't an invitation at all. And in Nero Wolfe's world, that's the kind that never dies quietly. I called Saul Panzer before Wolfe could invent a fresh objection. Saul answered on the third ring, sounding as if he'd been waiting for something better. "Panzer." "Saul, Archie. Wolfe wants a quick look into 49 West 11th Street and anything tied to a Christmas Eve dinner there. Ownership, staff, recent traffic, and whatever the Greer Foundation is up to." A pause. "So he's interested." "He's offended. Same fuel, different label. Go." "I'll start with property, then Greer. I'll call when I've got something." Click. I dragged the Greer file from the cabinet and dropped it on Wolfe's desk. It was thick, dusty, and full of old grudges. Wolfe opened it delicately. "Caroline Greer is chairman," he murmured. "Widow of Jonas Greer, counsel, Leland Marsh. Executive Director, Eliza Rook. We have declined their invitations often. Marsh still dislikes me." "Everybody needs a hobby," I said. "Hallowell claims he attended a private dinner there 3 years ago and lost the evening." "Fear does not erase memory so neatly," Wolfe said without looking up. "Drugs do, an injury, or a deliberate lie." The note he found afterward demanded future loyalty. Either another placed it in his pocket, or he did so himself under conditions he now forgets. So I go see what's left in his head. "Yes, this afternoon you will visit him. Obtain a list of attendees from his calendar, correspondence, anything. Determine precisely why he resigned. I will have no generalities." Fritz appeared to remind me the goose was nearing revolt. I promised to return alive, grabbed my coat, and left Wolfe to glare at the invitation as if it had tracked mud on his rug. By 1:30 I was in a cab to East 73rd. Hallowell's building was limestone, sober, and expensive enough to make a burglar reconsider his future. The doorman inspected me, decided I wasn't press or police, and sent me up. Hallowell opened the door himself. The overcoat was gone. He wore a blue shirt open at the throat. He looked like a man who had been pacing hard enough to wear grooves. "Mr. Goodwin, I'm the field end of Mr. Wolfe's curiosity. Mind if I come in?" He waved me through. The place was neat, tasteful, and anonymous, like a catalogue. 2 framed photos tried to disagree. A dark-haired woman in a winter coat, and a boy about 10 grinning at the camera. Hallowell caught my glance. "My wife," he said softly. "She died 4 years ago. My son's at school." "Sorry." I pointed at a stack on the table. "What you've got?" "Calendar and emails from that week. I didn't keep much else." I sat and flipped to December 24th, 3 years back. 1 entry. Greer dinner, 8 p.m., West 11th. 2 days later he had scribbled, "Board fallout, CCG," and underlined it twice. "Fallout?" "The morning after," he said, rubbing his forehead. "Trustees were calling. Caroline Greer left a voicemail. We'd discuss my performance after the holiday." "Performance like dancing?" "Performance like talking." I called her back. She wouldn't say more by phone. On the 27th, she told me I'd made a public promise at the dinner, and I'd keep it. When I asked what promise, she said I knew perfectly well. I nodded. Nothing like being gaslit in a brownstone. She urged me to take time off. I did. When I came back, everyone acted as if the matter was settled, provided I behaved. "And you found the envelope that Christmas morning?" "Yes, in my coat pocket. Same handwriting. account numbers overseas, and a note thanking me for loyalty and saying they'd require it again. I burned it. Why not report it? He met my eyes. Because I was afraid of what I'd done while I didn't remember. We went through the printed emails. Most were bland. 2 gave off heat, one from Eliza Rook that morning. Your candor was brave. We'll proceed as discussed. Another from Leland Marsh 2 days later. We accept your assurances. Don't disappoint us again. No details, but plenty of implication. Now the resignation, I said. His jaw set. I discovered grants going into shell non-profits controlled by trustees. I confronted Marsh. He threatened me. Caroline played innocent. Rook begged for the mission. I stayed through the quarter to close books, then quit. They let you. They sent a severance agreement with a strict non-disclosure clause. I signed. I wanted out. Then why yank you back with a Christmas summons? Because they think I promised something that night, or because I know too much and they want me controlled. Either way, they're leaning on your missing hours. I gathered the papers to copy. Any doctor afterward? No. Medication that night? Allergies? Anything a hostess could exploit? None. I hardly drink. 1 glass of champagne because it was poured. Your car. You left it in a private garage on Charles Street. If you don't remember leaving, how'd it get there? He frowned. It was there the next morning. The attendant said I brought it in close to midnight. Alone? He said he thought so. Thought so, I repeated. Okay, don't contact Greer. Don't answer them unless they corner you. If anything else arrives, call me before you touch it. At the door he asked, Will Mr. Wolfe help? He already is, I said. He just prefers to call it self-defense. In the elevator, I weighed the case with the copied papers in my pocket. A blank night, dead cameras, a private garage, and a foundation that turned charity into chess. Somebody on West 11th had a story buried under Christmas trimmings, and they were betting Hallowell wouldn't dig it up. Wolfe hated bets he didn't place. So did I, and I headed back downtown, planning where to put the shovel first. Outside, the wind had teeth. I hailed a cab and gave the driver West 35th to drop me near the Greer offices for a look around. If they were staging a reprise, I wanted the cast list. The Greer Foundation's offices sat on West 35th in a building that used to make shirts and now made Virtue. I had the cab drop me half a block away so I could stroll in like I was expected. The lobby was all glass, brass, and photographs of thankful children. The receptionist wore a holiday sweater and a face that had learned to keep secrets. Eliza Rook, I said. Tell her Archie Goodwin. That name still buys a raised eyebrow. Wolfe had turned Greer down often enough that their people had heard of us. She asked about an appointment. I told her I had a question she'd want to answer. She called. The gate clicked. Up I went. Rook met me in a conference room with a view of Midtown. She was thinner in person, sharp and dressed like someone who'd never met a stray thread. She didn't offer her hand. Mr. Goodwin, this is unexpected. So is Christmas, I said. Thanks for seeing me. I'm here about Theodore Hallowell. Her eyes stayed on mine, but the pupils pinched. Mr. Hallowell resigned months ago. We have no business with him. He got an invitation to 49 West 11th Street for Christmas Eve. A beat. That house is not a foundation office. It's a property we maintain for donors. Same handwriting as your old mailings. He was there 3 years ago. He doesn't remember half the evening. You do? Her voice cooled. Are you suggesting we harmed a guest? I'm suggesting someone did. Start with the easy question. Who hosted that dinner? Mrs. Greer. Then why is the host unnamed now? There is no invitation from us, she said flatly. I leaned back. Your email the next morning thanked Hallowell for his candor and said you'd proceed as discussed. What was discussed? That correspondence is private. So is a missing night. What happened at that dinner? She folded her hands. Nothing irregular. It was an informal gathering for trustees and donors. Mr. Hallowell attended as treasurer. If he is distressed, he should consult counsel. Meaning your counsel, Leland Marsh, who wrote him 2 days later that he accepted Hallowell's assurances and hoped he wouldn't disappoint you again. Her jaw set. Mr. Marsh was addressing internal matters. Internal matters that now look like leverage. Did anyone pour Hallowell champagne that night? A caterer. Name? I don't recall. Did anyone drive him home? No, he left on his own. The line came out too quick, like she'd practiced it. I noted it, smiled politely, and stood. All right, I'll tell Wolfe you deny the invitation, remember nothing irregular, and recall very clearly that he left alone. If anyone from Greer contacts Hallowell again, advise them to stop. Wolfe dislikes being scheduled. Good day, Mr. Goodwin. Her assistant hustled me out. Outside, the wind had teeth. I ducked into a phone booth and called Wolfe. She denies it's their invitation, I reported. Admits the dinner, says Greer hosted, claims no irregularities, won't talk details, and she said, too fast, that Hallowell left alone. We will suppose she lies, Wolfe said. Yeah, I'm heading to West 11th to look at the house. Exercise restraint, he growled. The premises are not ours. Mine either, I said, and hung up. West 11th in December is the kind of street that makes you lower your voice. Old brick, bare trees, windows glowing. Number 49 was halfway down, a neat brownstone with a black door, a brass knocker, and twin wreaths hung like eyes. Curtains drawn, but not tight. Someone was home. I didn't ring the bell. Instead, I crossed to a deli with 2 tables in the window, bought coffee, and sat where I could see the stoop. 10 minutes later, a delivery van rolled up. A man in a knit cap hauled 2 wooden crates to the steps. The door opened before he knocked. A tall man in a dark coat took the crates, looked once up and down the block, then shut the door. Groceries, not catering. Somebody was stocking the place like guests were expected soon. I finished my coffee and wandered to the corner where a hardware store crouched between boutiques. The owner had the slow eyes of a man who sees everything. I asked, while fingering padlocks, "That Greer house on the block still do parties?" He snorted. Sometimes. Christmas stuff mostly. Quiet lately. Seen activity? More this week. Tall security fella started hanging around, mean looking, parks around the corner, doesn't chat. Rook been there. He nodded. 2 nights ago, went in late. I thanked him, bought a pack of screws to keep my conscience level, and walked back toward 49. Near the brownstone I slowed, pretending to admire a window. The street felt clean and still, but I could taste eyes. I kept going, turned the corner, then shadowed back to watch from a doorway. A black sedan glided in and eased to the curb opposite 49. The driver stayed put, engine idling, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. Watching, and not shy about it. Either they were sloppy or they wanted the watcher to be seen. I took a look at the driver through the windshield. Middle-aged, hat low, collar up. But the posture wasn't thug. It was employee. He checked his mirror twice, then glanced at the brownstone as if waiting for a signal. When a pedestrian passed, he stiffened. Whoever hired him had told him to be visible and nervous. That meant the message was intended for me or for Hallowell. I let my breath out and headed for the subway. By the time I climbed the steps back into Midtown dusk, I had the shape of it. Someone at Greer was lying about the invitation. Someone at West 11th was rehearsing for Christmas Eve, and Hallowell was the designated guest whether he liked it or not. Wolfe would take that as an insult to his household and to logic, which meant the real fun was just getting started. By the time I reached the brownstone, it was a little after 6. The house smelled the way it always does when Fritz is in a forgiving mood. roast, butter, and disciplined coffee. I hung my coat, went to the office, and found Wolfe in the red chair, a book open on his lap, the Greer file on the desk. He didn't look up. Report. I gave it to him in order: Hallowell's calendar, the 2 emails, Rook's denials, the activity at West 11th, the crates, and the sedan with its hired stare. Wolfe listened without interruption. When I finished, he closed the book. Eliza Rook's assertion that Hallowell left alone was too prompt. Like a kid blurting he didn't steal the cookie before you've looked at the jar. Precisely. It indicates rehearsal. Her denial of authorship for the invitation is also likely false. The handwriting is theirs or deliberately mimicked. Then why pretend it's not? Because their purpose is coercion. If they acknowledged the invitation, they would be accountable for it. By denying it, they preserve the threat's ambiguity. I sat. Meaning Hallowell shows up scared and they can say, "What invitation?" while taking whatever they want. Or while listening to what he says. They want him to arrive defeated. So we stroll in with him and undefeat him. "We do not stroll anywhere," Wolfe said. "I have no intention of attending a dinner at their pleasure. But I may send you." "Sending me is attending by proxy." "Then I may attend by proxy." He reached for the telephone. "Call Saul again. I want names and a list of individuals likely to be present on Christmas Eve." I called. Saul answered briskly. "Property is owned by the Greer Foundation. Key holders: Caroline Greer, Leland Marsh, Eliza Rook, and a facilities man, Don Richfield, plus Helmsley, protective for security." "Helmsley," I said. "Tall guy on the stoop might be theirs." "Likely. A caterer's schedule lists a private holiday supper there December 24th, 8 p.m. Guest count 14. Contacts Rook and Marsh." Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "Continue." "Possible attendees: Greer, Marsh Rook, Trustee Dr. Serena Vale, Biotech, Trustee Miles O'Hara, white hair, old Greer friend. Donor couple Paul and Jasmine Klein, finance partner Victor Cho. Staff note a special guest: T.H. Hallowell, others not named yet." I mouthed Miles to Wolfe. He nodded once. "Good," Wolfe said. "Stay engaged. I want background on each name tonight, particularly O'Hara and Vale. Find any incidents linked to Helmsley, call at 9. I watched Wolfe while Saul talked. His face was still, but the fingers of his right hand had begun their slow drum on the arm of the chair. That drum means only one thing. He has seen the outline of a trap and is deciding whether to spring it or turn it. When Saul mentioned the caterer, Wolfe's eyes flicked to the invitation, as if comparing notes with an enemy. When the names came, Vale, O'Hara, Cho, he stored them without comment, but I could tell which ones mattered by the tiniest pauses in his breathing. When he hung up, I said, "So there's a real dinner. Rook doesn't recall her own caterer. She lies easily, or believes lies are for those without power. And Hallowell is the special guest." Wolfe was silent a moment. 3 years ago, Hallowell attended this ritual and emerged with a list of offshore accounts and a threat. The list implies financial crime. The threat implies complicity. Their motive now is either to renew his complicity or silence him, or frame him for something he didn't do. Possibly, which is why we must control the evening. I will not allow them to administer it unobserved. How do we control an evening we don't attend? We attend in the only way necessary. He spread a hand over his desk. Here, on our terms, we will bring the gathering to us. You want to summon them? In due time, not yet. First, we require a lever. They think Hallowell is theirs. We must take him from their hand and replace him with information. Wolfe looked at me. Tomorrow you will see Dr. Serena Vale. She's volatile. Her ambition has outpaced caution. She will resent being commanded in Caroline Greer's shadow. I grinned. So I poke her. Exactly. Next, Miles O'Hara. If Hallowell remembers him distinctly, O'Hara played a prominent role. He may be the architect. Find his weaknesses. Got it, and Hallowell. He will be protected. He will not set foot on West 11th unless I decide it. Telephone him tonight. If he is approached, he will say only that he has consulted me. Which will scare them. It will annoy them. Scared people are careless. Annoyed people are reckless. Fritz appeared to announce dinner. Wolfe rose with reluctance. At the table he ate with more appetite than usual, which told me he was already chewing on the case. Afterward, in the office, Wolfe dictated a brief note to Hallowell. I telephoned and read it. "So I don't go unless Mr. Wolfe tells me to," he said. "That's right. If Greer contacts you, tell them your counsel insists on arranging any meeting through me." My counsel? Mr. Wolfe. Cheaper than a lawyer, and twice as dangerous, and a lot more stubborn. He tried to chuckle and failed. "Thank you." When I hung up, Wolfe said, "Do not underestimate the pressure they can exert. Keep Hallowell close. Tomorrow, Vale and O'Hara. Tonight, Saul sends dossiers. You plot from that chair." Wolfe's gaze went back to the invitation. "Christmas is sentimentality. This is power. Power must be corrected." I left him there and went upstairs with the feeling that the brownstone had just accepted a challenge it didn't ask for, and that Nero Wolfe, who never left home on Christmas Eve, was about to rearrange someone else's holiday plans with surgical pleasure. Morning in the brownstone comes with a schedule tighter than a banker's collar. Wolfe has breakfast at 8, orchids at 9, and contempt for the rest of the world until noon. I had my own timetable. Coffee at 7, the newspaper at 7:05, and the kind of legwork that earns those indulgences by 10. On Wednesday I got the legwork. Saul called at 9 sharp. I had him on speaker so Wolfe could listen while pretending not to. "Serena Vale," Saul said, 42, founder of ValeGen Therapeutics. Greer money funds her gene-editing study. Greer got naming rights and a board seat. Vale wants federal grants and hates being patronized. She's been feuding with Caroline Greer over investment oversight. Address, penthouse at the Brantley, East 66th. Wolfe made a soft noise that meant continue. "Miles O'Hara," Saul went on. 71, old money, real estate and private equity. Longtime Greer trustee close to Jonas Greer. Reputation for cultivating protégés and then owning them. 2 lawsuits settled, quietly with former associates. Lives on Riverside. He's a spider. "Victor Cho?" Wolfe asked. 49, CFO of Cho Maritime. Greer donor. Sometimes handles their overseas philanthropy vehicles. Overlapped with Hallowell in finance meetings. Straight face with crooked wrists if rumors hold. "Thank you, Saul. Find caterer staff and Helmsley guards from 3 years ago." After he hung up, Wolfe nodded at me. "Dr. Vale first. Mention Hallowell only when she is curious." Cat handling. Got it. Just before 11, I was in a cab to East 66th. The Brantley looks allergic to ordinary people. The elevator man took me to the penthouse without asking why. Her assistant, young, severe, and likely smarter than me, checked me over. "Dr. Vale is between calls. I'll wait between chairs. Tell her Archie Goodwin." Vale came out in 10. She was tall, brisk, eyes that could chill soup. She waved me into a glass office. "Mr. Goodwin, I assume Nero Wolfe is not paying a social call?" "Hardly. Your name surfaced in a matter touching the Greer Foundation." Her mouth tightened. "If this is about the grant audit, I have counsel." "Not that kind. A Christmas Eve dinner at 49 West 11th. "You attend?" She gave a short laugh. "Their little temple." "Yes, when they summon. Not because I enjoy it." "Summon is strong. It's accurate. Mrs. Greer believes gifts entitle her to governance of other adults." "Did you attend 3 years ago with Theodore Hallowell as treasurer?" The name did it. "Yes, I remember him. Quiet man. Kept looking at the door as if he wanted to flee." "Anything unusual that night?" Vale considered whether to lie. There was a scene, late, after dinner. What scene? Marsh asked us to stay for a brief presentation. In the library, Hallowell stood by the fireplace. Miles O'Hara was there. O'Hara presented. He and Caroline, jointly. They talked about Greer's international commitments. Then they asked Hallowell to confirm arrangements. He agreed to something. He looked odd, sweaty, eyes glassy, spoke as if reciting. Drunk? No, he had one drink. Caroline scolded him for refusing a second. They were passing coffee and a spiced dessert. After the library, people drifted away. I left at midnight. Hallowell was still there. Did you see him leave? No. Did he protest? Not really. O'Hara told a story about loyalty and proper gratitude. He made Hallowell repeat an oath. Everyone chuckled as if it were a parlor game. It wasn't. Then Hallowell started talking. Too much. He said he was proud to serve Greer, that he would see the vehicles funded, that he had already made the transfers. Marsh looked pleased. Caroline looked relieved. I thought he was boasting. Now I think he was being used. Used how? Drugged, perhaps. Or coached. O'Hara likes to own people by making them complicit. Have you been invited this year? Of course. Same time, same house. But this year there's desperation in it. They're managing optics for something overseas. Money is being shuffled again. I refused a pre-meeting with Marsh last week. He didn't like it. Why a pre-meeting? He said the supper would require unity. I told him to buy a choir. I let that sit. Do you know why Hallowell resigned? Rumors. He questioned transfers to Shell Charities. Caroline said he was nervous. O'Hara said he was ungrateful. In their language, that means he didn't obey. If you had to guess who orchestrated the library scene? O'Hara. Caroline is vain, Marsh is legal, but O'Hara is strategic. There's a line on Hallowell's new invitation. You will come because you already have. Sound like him? Yes. Past favors as chains. Will you tell Wolfe this? She hesitated. I don't want war with Greer. My lab depends on their check, but I don't like seeing people coerced. I'll speak to Wolfe off the record if I may do it somewhere neutral. We'll arrange it. Call me. And if anyone from Greer presses you about Hallowell, I'd like to know. She took my card. They will press. In the elevator down, the case tightened another notch. We had a clear picture of that missing evening. A library, an oath, O'Hara at the rudder, and Hallowell glass-eyed by the fire. Not proof yet, but a lever. On the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. I answered. Mr. Goodwin, a smooth voice said. Leland Marsh. I understand you've been making inquiries about our holiday supper. I smiled at the traffic. You understand fast. There's no need for antagonism. If Mr. Wolfe wishes to discuss Mr. Hallowell's concerns, he may contact me directly. He may, if he wishes. Right now, he doesn't. A pause, colder. Mr. Hallowell is a guest of the Foundation. We expect his attendance on Christmas Eve. Expectations are cute, especially when they come without a signature. Silence. Then, good day, Mr. Goodwin. He hung up. I stood there a second. They were rattled enough to call me before noon, and in a pond like theirs, ripples bring up things from the bottom. I headed for the subway. I came up out of the subway at 72nd and Broadway under that thin December light. Miles O'Hara lived a few blocks west in a building that had started life as a hotel and now housed people who would rather buy the opera than attend it. The doorman knew my name and buzzed me up without a question. O'Hara answered the knock himself. Men like him usually delegate doors, so that was my first ditch. He was tall and spare, white hair combed back, pale eyes amused the way a collector is amused by a rare coin. A cardigan hung on him expensively. Archie Goodwin, he said. You work for Nero Wolfe. Do, And you're Miles O'Hara. Guilty. Come in. I was hoping you'd appear. That was my second itch. I stepped into a living room wide enough to host a treaty signing. A Christmas tree stood in a corner looking already judged. O'Hara offered me a chair, poured himself a drink, and did not offer me one. "You've been asking about our Christmas Eve supper," he said. "Do you like Christmas, Mr. Goodwin?" "I like the 26th. Why were you hoping I'd appear?" "Because when Wolfe stirs, it is always for a reason. I've admired his mind for years, his stubbornness less so. I thought perhaps he had found amusement in our foundation." "Amusement isn't the word he used." "Offense, then." O'Hara sipped. "Who sent you? Hallowell?" "Wolfe sent me. Hallowell is a client." His eyes sharpened a fraction. "Ah, so Theodore is frightened again?" "Again?" He has always been tremulous. Conscientiousness is fear in a good suit. "You knew him well." "I knew him as treasurer. He did excellent work until he became moral." "People get moral when numbers don't add up, or when they're asked to do things they don't recall agreeing to." He said it like a remark about traffic. "So you recall that dinner 3 years ago?" "Of course. I recall most dinners." "Anything unusual that night?" He looked pleased. "Tell me what you're hunting, and I may save you time." "I'm hunting what happened to Hallowell between your library and the next morning." O'Hara blinked slowly. "He doesn't remember. He didn't then. He doesn't now. You had him in your library repeating an oath. He ate a spiced dessert afterward. He looked glassy-eyed. Dr. Vale is talkative," he said. "She is honest." "Those are not always the same. Yes, we asked Theodore for reassurance. We found a leak in our overseas giving vehicles. He assured us publicly that he would correct it. He did so, then he resigned. That is the sum. You didn't find it odd that he spoke as if reciting?" "I found it admirable that he finally spoke at all. On Christmas Eve, for once, he owned his place among us." "Owned is a word you like." "I like ownership because it imposes responsibility." He smiled faintly. "Wolfe understands that. He owns you, does he not?" "He pays me. I keep him from starving on principle." O'Hara studied me, then leaned forward. "Tell Wolfe I'm not his enemy. If he wants to protect Theodore from imagination, I applaud it. But if he intends to accuse the Foundation based on a lost evening and a melodramatic invitation, he will embarrass himself." "Invitation you deny sending." "We did not send it. Caroline is too proud to beg a man who begged us to release him. Yet you expect his attendance. We hope he will attend. There are matters to settle. I would prefer them settled pleasantly." "How pleasantly did you settle matters with his offshore account list?" The smile thinned. "Those accounts were legal instruments for philanthropy." O'Hara stood. "I will not be cross-examined in my own home. You have what you came for. Tell Wolfe Christmas is a poor season for war." "War picks its own season. One more thing. Who besides you, Greer, Marsh, and Rook was in the library that night?" He paused. "The Kleins, Victor Cho, Dr. Vale, Theodore. That's all." "No staff?" "Not in the room. Children don't drug their treasurers." His eyes went flat. "Be careful." "I've made a career out of it." I left. He didn't follow, which meant someone else was watching where I couldn't see. I walked 3 blocks before hailing a cab to see if any shadow peeled off behind me. One did, the same black sedan from yesterday, easing along a half-block back. They weren't subtle. They were counting on my noticing. I let them count. At the brownstone, Wolfe was in the office, planted like an oak. I gave him O'Hara's calm denials and the slices of truth tucked into sarcasm. "He is confident," Wolfe said. "Confidence is either innocence or preparation." "Not innocence. No." He admitted the library scene without flinching. "He expects us to know it anyway. That suggests the leverage lies elsewhere, after the library. The spiced dessert is of interest. We will learn who prepared it. Saul's digging up caterers and Helmsley guards. Good. Meanwhile, we will take a step that irritates them. Wolfe reached to the mail. Read what came today. There were bills and a plain white envelope addressed to Nero Wolfe in block letters. No stamp. Hand-delivered. Inside was a single sheet, typed, "Mr. Wolfe, this is not your affair. Mr. Hallowell will attend. Do not interfere." "A friend," I read it aloud. Wolfe's face didn't move, but I knew I'd just watched someone light a fuse in his living room. He lifted his eyes to me at last. "A friend," he said softly, and the softness was the dangerous kind. "They presume intimacy and issue a command. That is consistent." He extended his hand. I gave him the sheet. He sniffed it as if smell might betray a printer, then set it beside the invitation. "Someone has now entered my house twice without my consent," he said. "They will not do it a third time." I waited for the rest. Wolfe did the thing he does when a man has shouted in a library. He got quieter. He leaned back in the red chair, fingertips together, eyes lowered to the two papers on the desk as if they were chess pieces he was deciding to sacrifice. "Archie," he said at last, "someone has been in this house today." That envelope didn't levitate. No, Fritz did not admit him. Theodore Hallowell did not deliver it. Therefore it was delivered when Fritz was occupied and you were absent. That suggests access, not boldness. You think they picked the lock? Or used the door as if they owned it? The lock will tell us. He raised his voice. "Fritz!" Fritz came in from the kitchen, wiping his hands, a tall, calm man who still looks like he could teach a ballroom class without raising his voice. "Yes, Herr Wolfe. Did you admit anyone to the house today?" "No, sir. Only the butcher at the kitchen entrance at 9, as always. I locked after him." "Did you leave the front door unlocked at any time?" Fritz's eyebrows arched. "Never, sir." "Did anyone ring the bell after I went upstairs?" "No, sir." Wolfe nodded. "Thank you. Archie will examine the lock." Fritz glanced at me with the faintest twitch at one corner of his mouth. Fritz's version of a shrug. He left. I went to the front door and got down on a knee with a pen light. The lock plate had a bright, thin scratch along the lower edge. Not long, not deep, but fresh. Whoever did it knew what he was doing, and did it fast. I came back in. Fresh scratch, quick job. They got in without ringing. Wolfe murmured. Thus they wanted us to know they could. They are not merely coercing Theodore. They are testing me. Testing you is a hobby that shortens lives. We shall return the test. He picked up the typed threat between two fingers. They wish to keep this affair in their house. They will not. We will move it to mine. You're going to invite the Greer gang here? Yes. Tonight. All of them. Tonight. That's a little sudden? Excellent. A sudden summons prevents rehearsal. Telephone Saul. Tell him to come at 8. Then telephone Inspector Kramer. Inform him I desire his presence at 8:30 regarding an attempted extortion with possible felony elements. You want the cops in your office? Only in my office. Not in my dining room. If they have entered my house unlawfully, I will respond with the proper authority waiting. His eyes cut to me. Do not argue. I have already decided. I didn't argue. I called Saul first. He said he'd be here. Then I called Kramer. Kramer doesn't do enthusiasm before dinner, but he recognizes the tone of Wolfe's voice even secondhand. You saying you've got a case? He grunted. I'm saying Wolfe wants you at 8:30, I said, and he used the words attempted extortion and felony. So bring your hat and your patience. There was a long sigh. All right, Goodwin. But if this is another one of his games, it's a game somebody else started in his parlor. You know how he is about that. Yeah, Kramer said darkly. I know. The phones weren't done with me. I called Leland Marsh at his office and reached him on the 3rd try. He sounded as if he'd swallowed a law book. Marsh. Archie Goodwin. Mr. Wolfe requests the presence of you, Mrs. Caroline Greer, Ms. Eliza Rook, Mr. Miles O'Hara, Dr. Serena Vale, Mr. Victor Cho, and Mr. and Mrs. Paul Klein at his office tonight at 8. A beat that I could feel through the line. Tonight? That's absurd. Absurd is a matter of perspective. Mr. Wolfe will discuss a criminal attempt involving Mr. Hallowell and your Christmas Eve supper. If you fail to appear, Mr. Wolfe will proceed without you. Proceed how? With Inspector Kramer in the room? I let that settle. Would you like me to spell Kramer? You have no right. 8 o'clock, I said, and hung up. I repeated the process with the others. Greer herself was harder to reach. I left word that the matter was urgent and involved her treasurer's safety. Rook answered for Greer and hissed my name like a swear word, but she took the message. O'Hara was serenely polite and said he would attend, if only to prevent nonsense. Cho's secretary said he was out, but would be told. The Klein's butler asked whether it was formal. I said black tie would be wasted on a brow-beating, but he could wear his best scowl. Before 6, I called Hallowell and told him not to come unless Wolfe asked again. He sounded shaky but obedient, which is a nice combination if you're a target. At dinner, Wolfe ate in 3 calm motions, as if savoring the last predictable hour of his day. Fritz served veal with mushrooms and watched Wolfe the way you watch a kettle just before the boil. I ate fast because I was going to be referee. By 7:30, the office was ready. The chairs were aligned, the lights adjusted to Wolfe's taste, and I'd tucked the invitation and the threat sheet into a folder on his desk. Kramer arrived at 8:20. Coat still on, face already sour. "You said extortion," he said. "We said a lot of things. Sit down and listen. You'll catch up fast." He glared at the red chair. "Where's Wolfe?" "Right there," Wolfe said from behind him. Kramer jumped a fraction and turned. Wolfe was already seated, vast and calm. "Good evening, Inspector." "Evening," Kramer grunted. "You got us all running in the dark again?" "Not all," Wolfe said. "Only those with a conscience." At 8 sharp, the doorbell rang. I went to open it and started the parade. First came Eliza Rook, chin high, coat trimmed in something soft and guilty. She didn't look at me and took the chair I indicated as if it were a court summons. Leland Marsh followed, straight-backed, eyes hard, carrying a briefcase that screamed insurance. Then the Kleins arrived in a matched set of impatience and perfume. Paul with a red face and an overfed confidence, Jasmine with a fox-stole expression and eyes that missed nothing. Miles O'Hara came next, alone, unhurried, holding his hat in a way that made it look like a prop. He gave Wolfe a nod that didn't quite qualify as respect. Dr. Vale swept in a minute later, coat unbuttoned, jaw set, and took a seat without asking where. Victor Cho was last, arriving at 8:25 with a neutral smile and a quiet cologne. He looked at the room, at Kramer, and did not change expression, which took either iron nerves or stupidity. I wasn't sure which. Caroline Greer had not come. That omission sat in the air like smoke. Wolfe waited until they were all seated. Then he said, "You have been summoned because an intrusion has occurred twice within my household and once within Mr. Hallowell's life. I will now ask questions. You will answer them succinctly. If you are tempted to evade, remember Inspector Kramer is present." Marsh started to speak. Wolfe lifted a hand. "Not yet. First, I will read aloud a document delivered to me today." He read the typed threat slowly, savoring its insolence. I watched faces. Rook's nostrils flared. Marsh went slightly paler. O'Hara looked bored. Cho's eyes flicked once to Rook. Vale frowned outright. Paul Klein said, "What the hell is this?" and Jasmine hushed him with a look. Wolfe placed the sheet on the desk. Second, an invitation received by Theodore Hallowell to your supper at 49 West 11th Street on December 24th, bearing the phrase, "You will come because you already have." He let that line hang. It pricked the room like a pin. Now, Wolfe said mildly. Who composed that phrase? No one spoke. The silence wasn't empty. It was crowded with calculations. Wolfe sat in the middle of it like a jury foreman. Kramer shifted, already impatient. Wolfe ignored him. Very well, Wolfe said. We will proceed by other means. Mr. Marsh, as counsel to the Greer Foundation, do you deny that you have scheduled a Christmas Eve supper at that address at 8 o'clock for 14 guests, including Theodore Hallowell? Marsh said stiffly, No, we have planned a supper. It is not a legal matter. It is now. Why has Mr. Hallowell been made a special guest? Marsh's eyes flashed. He is a former officer. We wish to clear misunderstandings and restore amity. Amity enforced by anonymous threats and unlawful entry. Wolfe's voice stayed level, but the air got colder. We will not waste time. 3 years ago, on Christmas Eve, Mr. Hallowell attended your supper. Afterward, he found in his pocket a note containing offshore account numbers and a statement requiring future loyalty. He does not recall leaving your house. Are any of you prepared to explain that? This time, the silence was different. It thudded. Rook stared at the rug. Klein opened his mouth and shut it. Vale watched O'Hara like a hawk. Cho's expression stayed polite. Wolfe leaned forward a millimeter. I remind you again that Inspector Kramer is present. And right there, with all those eyes pinned to Wolfe's desk and nobody breathing quite right, I felt the whole case tip into the next phase, the one where liars start choosing which truth costs the least. Silence has weight. In Wolfe's office that night, it settled on shoulders and pressed down on consciences, and even Kramer seemed willing to wait and see which one cracked first. Paul Klein couldn't stand it. He lurched forward in his chair. This is ridiculous. We came here because Marsh said some crazy detective was threatening to drag us into a police mess. Now you're talking about notes in pockets 3 years ago. I don't know a thing about it. Wolfe tilted his head. Then you may learn. Your ignorance does not exempt you from relevance. You were present in the library that night, Mr. Klein. Did you see Mr. Hallowell consume any food or drink after coffee was served? Klein blinked. Food? There was dessert. Some kind of pear thing, spiced. A compote, Jasmine Klein said softly. Poached pears with cloves. I remember because Caroline insisted it was an heirloom recipe. Wolfe's eyes moved to her. Did Mr. Hallowell eat it? Yes. He didn't want to at first. Miles urged him, said it was rude to refuse on Christmas Eve. O'Hara's pale eyes flicked toward her, not angry, just interested. Wolfe noticed. Dr. Vale, Wolfe said, you told my assistant this morning that Mr. Hallowell appeared glassy-eyed in the library before dessert. Is that correct? Vale sat straighter. Yes. He looked drugged. Marsh snapped. That is an outrageous allegation. Wolfe raised a hand. Mr. Marsh, I have not yet accused. Mr. Cho, you handled overseas vehicles for the Foundation with Mr. Hallowell. Did you ever see account lists inserted into his work without his knowledge? Cho's smile was thin. No. I require signatures for transfers. Theodore signed, he knew what he was doing. On paper, perhaps. Wolfe's eyes stayed mild. Did you see him sign anything that night? Cho hesitated. There was a document, after the discussion in the library. Miles had it. Theodore signed. We all did. Kramer leaned forward. Wolfe said, a document, what kind? An addendum to a donor charter, Cho replied. Expanding Greer's foreign programs. It was ceremonial. Where is it now? In the Foundation's files. Mr. Marsh, do you confirm this addendum exists? Marsh's cheeks reddened. Yes. It was an internal pledge. Not illegal. Then why signed at midnight with champagne and a coerced man? Vale cut in. We all knew what it was, forcing him to approve offshore routing. Marsh whirled on her. Your laboratory survives on Greer's generosity. Generosity that launders money, she said. Don't threaten me with your checkbook. O'Hara said quietly, Enough. He looked at Wolfe. If you've brought us here for gossip, you waste our time. Wolfe regarded him. Mr. O'Hara, you speak as if time were yours. It is not. Let us return to the missing memory. Mrs. Greer has not attended. Do you deny the invitation to? Mr. Hallowell was sent at her direction. I deny it, O'Hara said. I advised her to leave Theodore alone. Yet you want him present on Christmas Eve to restore amity. I want him present because he promised to be. A man should honor what he pledges. Only if he consented. Wolfe's voice cooled. If Mr. Hallowell was drugged, he did not. Drugged by whom? Marsh demanded. By the person who prepared or administered the dessert, Wolfe said. I note the dessert was described as an heirloom, insisted upon by Mrs. Greer, and pressed on him by you, Mr. O'Hara. Yet Mrs. Greer is absent. Curious. Rook finally spoke, tight. Caroline is ill. She sent me to represent her. Then represent her truthfully. Was the dessert prepared in-house or by the caterer? In-house, Rook said. Caroline cooks it herself every year. Wolfe leaned back. So Mrs. Greer controlled the vehicle for a drug, if drug there was, and she controlled the invitation, and she has now avoided this room after delivering a threat into my house. Inspector Kramer, are you listening? I'm listening, Kramer grunted. I'm also waiting for something I can put on paper. You will have it. Wolfe turned to Cho. Who witnessed Mr. Hallowell's signature most closely? Cho glanced at O'Hara. Miles stood beside him, helped him hold the pen. Theodore's hand was trembling. A trembling hand held by another, Wolfe murmured. Afterward, Klein muttered, people drifted out. I remember Theodore sitting by the fire. Caroline was talking low to him. Then she smiled. And in the morning he found account numbers in his pocket, Wolfe said. A list likely prepared in advance. Mr. Cho, were those accounts used? Cho's eyes dropped. Yes, for 2 years. Then Theodore quit and we restructured. And now you need his signature or silence again, Wolfe said. Hence the invitation, hence the unlawful entry into my house. You're not seeking amity, you're seeking compliance. Marsh sprang up. This is outrageous. We will leave. Sit down, Mr. Marsh, Wolfe said. You may leave only when Inspector Kramer says you may. Kramer rose and planted himself by the door. Nobody leaves till I know what's what. The air tightened. O'Hara stayed composed, but a small muscle in his jaw worked once. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, please bring Mr. Hallowell from the front room. I fetched him. He entered pale and stiff, eyes widening at the lineup. Wolfe said gently, Mr. Hallowell, which one do you remember speaking to you alone after the library? Hallowell's gaze passed over the others and stopped on O'Hara. His breathing hitched. Him, he said. O'Hara's eyes met his. Theodore. Hallowell shook his head slowly. You told me I had to prove myself. You said I'd already taken their money, so I couldn't pretend to be clean. You put your hand on my shoulder and said I'd feel better after dessert. Wolfe closed his eyes for a second, as if savoring a click, then opened them. Thank you. That will do. No one spoke. Kramer watched O'Hara. Vale watched Wolfe. I watched all of them and felt the trap finally close, slow and sure in the quiet of winter. O'Hara didn't move. If a statue could feel annoyance, that's what he looked like. His voice came out level. Theodore, you are overwrought. I spoke to you as I have spoken to many young men who handle burdens beyond their temperament. I urged you to eat dessert because you were shaking and pale. That is all. Hallowell's hands were clenched. You said it would make me calm. It did, O'Hara said. Wolfe's eyes stayed on him. Yes, it did. Calm is one of the effects of chloral hydrate and several barbiturates when administered in a sweet vehicle, but we need not debate pharmacology to observe the essentials. Marsh snapped. "Are you accusing Mrs. Greer of drugging a treasurer?" "I am," Wolfe said. "With your cooperation, Mr. Marsh, and at Mr. O'Hara's instigation." Rook shot to her feet. "That's insane." "Sit down, Ms. Rook." She didn't. "Caroline would never—" Wolfe looked at Kramer. Kramer said, "Sit, lady. You can yell later." Rook dropped back into the chair as if shoved by air. Wolfe's fingers tapped once on the arm of his chair. "3 years ago, your foundation discovered, or constructed, a vulnerability. Theodore Hallowell knew the routes by which money was being diverted offshore in the name of philanthropy. He wavered. He was conscientious. Therefore, he was dangerous." Hallowell flinched at the word dangerous, but didn't deny it. "You needed his signature on a charter addendum," Wolfe continued, "to shield yourselves from future inquiries. But a signature obtained in ordinary daylight from a reluctant man lacks strength. A signature obtained while that man is drugged and surrounded by witnesses to his apparent enthusiasm is a weapon." Vale murmured, "Jesus." Wolfe nodded slightly in her direction, as if acknowledging a correct answer in class. "You administered a sedative in a clove-spiced pear compote prepared by Mrs. Greer. You then staged a loyalty ritual in the library, with Mr. O'Hara directing and Mr. Marsh providing legal patina. Mr. Hallowell, disoriented, complied. You induced him to speak as though he embraced your scheme, giving you the leverage of his own recorded or remembered words." Marsh's voice went hard. "There were no recordings." "Not on machines," Wolfe said. "On people, the best kind. So that the next morning, when he awoke with no memory and found a list of offshore accounts in his pocket, he would fear that he himself had compiled it in a moment of drunken confession. His fear kept him silent. Your note thanked him for loyalty and promised to require it again. That promise allows only one logical purpose: blackmail." Cho leaned forward, palms on knees. "You can't prove any of that." Wolfe's gaze slid to him. "You have already proved most of it yourself. You admit the addendum, the late signing, Mr. Hallowell's trembling hand held by Mr. O'Hara, and the use of offshore vehicles thereafter. Ms. Rook admits Mrs. Greer prepared the dessert. Dr. Vale testifies to Mr. Hallowell's altered state before and after. And now he recalls Mr. O'Hara urging him to eat to calm him. When disparate parts converge, proof becomes a matter of arithmetic." Kramer said, "Arithmetic I can sell to a DA needs more than logic, Wolfe." "We will give you more." Wolfe turned to me. "Archie, the envelope delivered today." I went to the file folder, took out the plain envelope with the typed threat, and offered it to Kramer. No stamp. Hand-delivered. Fresh scratch on the lock. Whoever brought it was in the house. Kramer took it, sniffed it with the suspicious nostrils of a man who has inspected too many cigars, and said, "We can dust it. If we get prints, we get our foot in." O'Hara smiled thinly. "You're going to criminalize a note with no signature?" "No," Wolfe said. "The note is merely the cord. The bell it rings is extortion and breaking and entering. The signature will come because the man who delivered it is not disciplined enough to resist vanity." "How will you make him sign?" Cho asked. "By depriving him of his prize." Wolfe looked at Hallowell. "Mr. Hallowell will not attend your supper. Publicly. He will inform Mrs. Greer tomorrow morning, through you, Mr. Marsh, that he declines unless the Foundation provides him with a written statement of what he supposedly promised 3 years ago and a copy of the addendum he signed. He will also request, in writing, a list of offshore accounts to which his name was attached." Marsh stared. "He is bound by non-disclosure." "A non-disclosure clause is not a muzzle against your own crimes," Wolfe said. "He will request. If you refuse, you reaffirm coercion. If you comply, you provide documentary evidence for Inspector Kramer and, more interestingly, you reveal the present urgency that requires him. Either response benefits us." Rook's voice shook. "Caroline won't give you anything." Then she will attempt to compel him by other means. That attempt will be observed. O'Hara stood slowly. You think you can steer this with parlor tricks? The Foundation has resources. Wolfe looked up at him with mild curiosity. Yes, that is why you have been reckless. Resources erode caution. You sent men to Mr. Hallowell's office. You arranged a dinner without naming yourselves. You entered my house to intimidate me. The man who believes himself invulnerable is always detectable by the spoor he leaves behind. Detectable to you, perhaps, O'Hara said, but not punishable. There is no victim. Theodore signed willingly. Hallowell spoke abruptly. Raw. I didn't. O'Hara's eyes cut to him. You did. You may not remember the pleasure of loyalty, but you performed it. Wolfe said quietly. There is a victim. There are many. You diverted charitable funds to shell entities for private gain. That is fraud. You drugged a treasurer to secure his signature. That is assault. You threatened him now. That is extortion. You entered my home. That is burglary. Your confidence has been expensive. Klein wiped sweat from his temple. Miles? What the hell? This isn't what you said this was. O'Hara ignored him. He addressed Wolfe. Suppose, for the sake of argument, that what you say is true. What do you want? A simple thing, Wolfe said. To deprive you of obedience that is not yours. I do not require repentance. I require cessation. Meaning that you will send no further invitation, direct or indirect, to Theodore Hallowell. You will sever his name from your accounts. You will dissolve whatever structure binds him. If you do not, Inspector Kramer will be forced to investigate, and I will be forced to assist him with disobliging thoroughness. Cho's mouth opened. Marsh's face went white. Rook looked as if she might faint or bite someone. Vale watched Wolfe with a kind of fierce admiration she'd try to deny later. O'Hara stared at Wolfe for a long time, measuring. Finally, he said, Mrs. Greer is not here to answer your demands. Then you will convey them. And if we refuse, then I will take pleasure in the investigation you have provoked. The word pleasure from Wolfe is like a comet, rare and meaningful. O'Hara heard it. His eyes narrowed, the first real sign of distress I'd seen on him. Kramer cleared his throat. All right, here's my part. Nobody leaves without giving me your names, addresses, and a statement. You can call your lawyers if you want, Marsh. But I'm keeping this envelope, and I'm asking a judge for a warrant tomorrow morning to examine your precious West 11th house for evidence of drugs and any records of that night. If you're clean, you'll sleep fine. If you're not, you might want to stop talking. They sat there, pinned between Wolfe's logic and Kramer's badge. It was the kind of corner rich people don't like because they can't buy their way out of it on the spot. O'Hara was the first to move. He picked up his hat. Very well. We will communicate with Mrs. Greer. Theodore will not be molested. Wolfe's tone was soft as velvet with a razor in it. Promises are not your currency, Mr. O'Hara. Proof is, I've arranged to receive yours. O'Hara gave a small, stiff nod and walked to the door. Kramer let him pass after taking his information. Marsh followed, jaw rigid. Rook paused as if to say something, decided against it, and left with her head high. Cho and the Kleins trailed after, shaken and resentful. When the last footstep died on the stairs, the office went quiet again, but in a cleaner way. Wolfe looked at Hallowell. You have been useful, he said. Now you will be prudent. You will do precisely as I have instructed. You will not be brave. Bravery is for idiots. Hallowell let out a breath that seemed to have been stuck in him for 3 years. Thank you, Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe waved a hand. Gratitude is premature. We have not yet met Mrs. Greer. She is the key, and keys have habits. Archie will escort you home. I did. In the cab, Hallowell said quietly, Do you think they'll try something tonight? Maybe, I said. But after Wolfe and Kramer tag-teamed them, if they try anything, it'll be because they can't help it, and that's exactly what Wolfe is betting on. He stared out the window at the city's Christmas lights like they'd been invented to mock him. I didn't blame him. Somewhere between West 11th and the Brownstone, somebody was about to learn that you don't send anonymous friends into Nero Wolfe's house and expect the season to stay peaceful. I got back to the Brownstone close to midnight, and the house had the kind of silence that means trouble is somewhere upstairs waiting for its turn. Fritz was asleep. The lights were low, and Wolfe sat in the office with a book open, but unread. He looked up. "Mr. Hallowell is home?" "Safe and shaken. He'll follow orders because he doesn't have any spares." "Fear can be educative," Wolfe said. "Sit down, Archie. We wait." "For what?" "For Mrs. Greer. A key has habits. She will attempt to turn the lock again tonight." At 12:10, the doorbell buzzed once, short and imperious. I opened the door 2 inches and found Caroline Greer alone on the stoop. Late 50s, sable coat, hair silvered and arranged as if it had its own staff. Money had polished her face into handsome certainty. She smiled at me as if I were hired furniture. "Mr. Goodwin, I must see Mr. Wolfe." "It's past midnight." "I know. Step aside." I let her in. She moved into the office like it was her drawing room. Wolfe didn't rise. "Mrs. Greer," he said, "you are punctual in your impertinence." "Mr. Wolfe, your assistant has frightened my trustees and embarrassed my counsel. I came to settle this privately." "Privately is a condition you have already violated," Wolfe said. "Someone entered my house yesterday without permission." Her eyes narrowed. "Absurd." "The lock is scratched. A letter was delivered without bell. You will not improve your position by lying." She shrugged. "If a letter arrived, that was not my doing. But I did not come to discuss your lock. I came to discuss Theodore Hallowell." "You will do so only if you speak truth." She looked at me. "May we talk alone?" "No," Wolfe said. She blinked. "Even your assistant stays?" "He is my instrument. You are my subject. Proceed." Her voice cooled into the register used for board meetings. "Mr. Hallowell was our treasurer. 3 years ago he signed an addendum to our donor charter. That addendum binds him to confidentiality. His resignation did not dissolve it. His appearance on Christmas Eve is required to reaffirm his commitment and prevent misunderstandings from spreading." "Authorities understand crime," Wolfe said. "Your addendum, signed by a drugged man, binds nothing except your arrogance." Her cheeks flushed. "Drugged? Theodore is weak. He drank, became theatrical, and signed because he wanted inclusion. Yet he does not remember leaving your house," Wolfe said. "Nor the theatricality. What you call weakness, I call conscience." She leaned forward. "You have no evidence. You have hearsay. You're an old man playing at morality." Wolfe's eyes were calm. "And you are a woman playing at charity. Tell me why you need Theodore at your supper this year." A heartbeat of hesitation. "Because his name is on the structures. Prudence requires that we keep him aligned." "Aligned with what?" "With our work. Your work includes offshore accounts and shell entities for private gain. You required his signature to legitimize them. Now you require his presence to intimidate him. But he will not come." "He will," she said. "He will not, because he is under my protection." "You cannot protect him from the Foundation." "I can protect him from you. Inspector Kramer will seek a warrant tomorrow. If it is resisted, your Foundation will be investigated publicly. Donors will flee. Your name will be synonymous with fraud by New Year's." She stared, doing arithmetic. Finally, she said, "What do you want?" "What I stated earlier," Wolfe said. "A written renunciation of any claim upon Theodore Hallowell, removal of his name from your accounts, and a guarantee that no invitation, threat, or contact will be directed at him again. Deliver it by noon tomorrow." She laughed once, brittle. "Guarantees aren't enforceable." "They are enforceable in my house. If you fail, I will assist Kramer with zeal." Her eyes flicked to me. And if I comply, then you will continue without Theodore's name. You will find a new treasurer. You will eat your heirloom pears in peace. She didn't like having her desire named. She stood. You are insufferable. I have been called worse by better people. She moved to the door, then looked back. You think you've won? You haven't met the people who truly profit from our work. Wolfe lifted his chin. Nor have you met the people who truly despise coercion. Good night, Mrs. Greer. She went out. I watched her leave, then returned. Wolfe had picked up his book again. You think she'll fold? I asked. She has already folded, Wolfe said. Her need is urgent, her threat empty. By noon, we will have her letter. Morning brought Saul on the phone. Kramer had his warrant. A Helmsley guard remembered a sleepy treasurer being half-guided to a car by a woman in red, and at 11:30 a courier arrived with Mrs. Greer's letter on Foundation stationery, renouncing Hallowell and severing him from their accounts. Wolfe read it, nodded once, and filed it. I phoned Hallowell with the news. He didn't cheer. He just let a long breath go like a man stepping off thin ice. He asked what would happen to Greer. I told him Kramer would follow the paper trail now that the chain to him was cut, and that his best move was to say nothing unless asked. He said he could do silence. When I hung up, the house felt lighter, as if an uninvited guest had finally been shown the door for good this time. At dinner that night, Fritz served a pear tart heavy with cloves. Wolfe tasted it, eyebrows lifting. An excellent spice, he said. In the correct hands, it comforts. In the wrong, it corrupts. That is power as well. I raised my glass. Here's to correct hands. He eyed me. Your hands are rarely correct, Archie. But they are adequate. Be grateful for adequacy. Merry Christmas, boss, I said. He grunted. Don't be sentimental. Eat your tart before it cools. The next day, which was the kind of gray December Friday that makes New York look honest by accident, I found Wolfe in his office at 11 with a seed catalog and a mood that suggested he was trying to pretend the Foundation didn't exist anymore. He was failing in that graceful way genius fails at pretending. I'd just brought him the morning paper and a second cup of coffee when the doorbell rang twice, close together, in the voice of a man who doesn't take no well. Wolfe's eyes didn't leave the catalog. Archie. All right, I said, and went to answer it with my usual 2 inches of caution. Inspector Kramer stood on the stoop with his hat in his hand and the look of a man who'd been awake all night because somebody else's idea of Christmas involved search warrants. Morning, he said. We need to talk. Do we ever not? He pushed past me without waiting for an invitation from the house. He doesn't play those games with me. Wolfe has to teach him manners by force, and Wolfe doesn't have the breath for it at 10 a.m. I escorted him to the office. Wolfe looked up mildly. Inspector, you are early, which implies annoyance. I'm annoyed, Kramer said, and I'm carrying a gift you're going to hate. Then place it on the desk. Fritz will remove it later. Kramer glared and dropped into the visitor chair. We executed the warrant at West 11th at 7. Found plenty we can use. Ledger copies, burner phones, a safe with transfer instructions. No drugs left. Greer's housekeeper had. Scrubbed the kitchen like a hospital. But that's not the worst of it. Wolfe put the catalog down with that deliberate slowness that means he's actually listening. Proceed. We found a man in the basement. I blinked. Alive? Barely. Helmsley security in a back room they call storage. Name's Don Richfield, maintenance guy for the Foundation. He was tied to a chair, mouth taped, half frozen. If we hadn't come when we did, he'd be a corpse by lunchtime. Wolfe's face didn't change, but I felt the air in the room shift. Who put him there? Kramer rubbed his eyes. He says Miles O'Hara did. That got me to sit down without being asked. O'Hara, I said. Why would O'Hara kidnap his own maintenance man? Because the maintenance man was the one who broke into your house. Kramer said to Wolfe, and he was scared enough to talk when O'Hara leaned on him. O'Hara leaned too hard. When Richfield started squealing, O'Hara panicked, shoved him downstairs and told the guard to hold him. That guard, whoever he is, decided to disappear instead. Wolfe's voice was a low rumble. Richfield entered my house on O'Hara's orders. Twice, Kramer said. He delivered Hallowell's invitation to Hallowell's office, too. He also typed that friend note to you. O'Hara dictated it. Richfield says O'Hara wanted you scared off, so Theodore would show up at West 11th alone and obedient. But after your little gathering in this room, O'Hara got worried you'd point a badge his way. So he went to silence the only guy who could prove he'd ordered the intimidation. And that, Wolfe said softly, is the difference between caution and arrogance. Kramer's jaw was working. We've got a warrant out for O'Hara now. He's not at his apartment. His driver says he left last night around 2 and hasn't returned. We've got units watching airports. You will not need to waste fuel, Wolfe said. Kramer snorted. Oh yeah? You got a crystal ball in those orchid rooms? No, I have logic. Mr. O'Hara is not running from you. He's running toward his resources. The only secure refuge he has is Mrs. Greer's private circle. He will attempt to retrieve or destroy the donor charter addendum and any parallel documents at her office. He cannot risk their seizure. Kramer stared. You think he'll go to Greer? Either to her office at once or to West 11th again. If you wish to catch him, go there. Do not delay. Kramer looked at me, then Wolfe, then stood. If you're wrong, I'm going to be wrong with company, Wolfe said blandly. Go, Inspector. Kramer hustled out with the muscles in his back, shouting about overtime. I listened for the door to slam, then turned to Wolfe. So O'Hara was the finger on the trigger, not Greer. I said it like I was aligning furniture in my head. She had motive to keep Hallowell quiet, but O'Hara had the taste for ownership. Caroline Greer is vain and complicit, Wolfe said, but she is not bold enough to invade my house. O'Hara is. He is the architect of ritual and coercion. She supplied dessert. He supplied design. And when the design started to crack, he tried to erase the drafter. Wolfe nodded once. He did not anticipate that his maintenance man might have a conscience sharper than his fear. So now what? We sit here and wait for Kramer to catch him. We do not wait, Wolfe said. We clarify so that when he is caught, there is no confusion about why. I knew that tone. It meant he had a coda in him and wanted an audience. Fate gave him one on schedule, because at 12:15 the doorbell rang again, this time with the bored patience of an official. I opened it to Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins, Kramer's tower of good intentions, holding a man by the elbow. The man was Miles O'Hara. He looked worse by daylight, not disheveled, he'd never allow that, but as if his composure had spent the night on a treadmill. His eyes were still calm, but the calm was now an act, with the seams showing. Stebbins cleared his throat. Mr. Goodwin, Inspector Kramer asked me to bring Mr. O'Hara here. We found him at Mrs. Greer's office. He asked to see Mr. Wolfe before he speaks further. Wolfe lifted his chin. Bring him in. Stebbins guided O'Hara into the office. O'Hara didn't look at Stebbins. He looked at Wolfe as if this were a scheduled meeting he intended to chair. Mr. Wolfe, he said, you've made this very messy. Wolfe's voice held all the warmth of a marble countertop. You made it messy when you entered my house without an invitation. O'Hara's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Richfield is a fool, he exaggerated. There was no burglary, merely a message. A message that became extortion, Wolfe said, and now kidnapping. Your vocabulary is insufficient. Stebbins shifted. Mr. Wolfe, Inspector Kramer said, Sergeant, Wolfe said gently, you may remain by the door. Say nothing unless I ask. This will be brief. Stebbins nodded, bewildered but obedient. Wolfe fixed O'Hara with his mildest gaze, which is the one that makes men sweat because it feels like scrutiny without anger. You have come, Wolfe said, because you already have. O'Hara's eyes flicked down, an involuntary blink of recognition. Wolfe went on calmly. You fashioned the phrase on the invitation because it was the essence of your method. You bind people by their past compliance. 3 years ago, you bound Theodore Hallowell with a drugged signature and a note of offshore accounts. You then watched him fear himself into silence. When he resigned, you could have let him go. He was already cowed. But you are not content with fear. You are addicted to possession. The moment he escaped your reach, you pursued him again. O'Hara held still, but I saw the faint stiffening at the corner of his jaw. Wolfe continued like a man reading a recipe. Your supper this year required a scapegoat and a rebuilt chain. You needed Hallowell present in a room of your witnesses to renew the oath and to place him under a fresh obligation. By keeping the invitation anonymous, you made the threat shapeless. By denying it, Rook and Marsh preserved plausible ignorance. You ordered Richfield to deliver it and to enter my house with your typed warning because you believed I would refuse to endure intrusion. I expected you to keep to your orchids, O'Hara said lightly, and I expected you to keep to your arrogance. Wolfe's words were quiet. You then compounded your error. When your maintenance man grew frightened and might have spoken to the police, you imprisoned him. You did not do so for self-preservation only, but to preserve your image as a man who commands obedience without consequence. That image is now destroyed. O'Hara stared. Image? You think this is vanity? I have built Greer's foreign mission for 20 years. I have protected donors and beneficiaries from the state's clumsy fingers. Bureaucracy kills more children than any of our vehicles. Wolfe lifted an eyebrow. Ah, the oldest refuge of criminals, believing their purpose sanctifies their means. You call fraud a mission, assault a ritual, and blackmail protection. That is not philosophy, Mr. O'Hara. It is appetite. Appetite? O'Hara repeated. Yes, Wolfe said. The appetite to own. Silence. Even Stebbins held his breath. O'Hara's face didn't sag, but something in his eyes dimmed, like a man who has finally met the limit of persuasion. You're clever, he said, but you are also naive. Caroline will survive this. Greer will survive. And you will find, Mr. Wolfe, that justice is rarely as pure as your logic. Wolfe's mouth tightened in distaste. Justice is not purity, it is correction. Sergeant. Stebbins blinked. Yes, sir? Telephone Inspector Kramer and tell him Mr. O'Hara is here, prepared to be taken into custody. He may also wish to bring a warrant for Caroline Greer and Leland Marsh. Their complicity is formal, and their ignorance feigned. Stebbins went to the hall phone, flustered but eager to be useful. O'Hara didn't resist. He only watched Wolfe with the cold curiosity of a man studying the trap after stepping into it. Before Stebbins returned, O'Hara said quietly, Theodore will not thank you. He already has, Wolfe said, but gratitude from him is irrelevant. I did not accept his case for gratitude. I accepted it because you presumed to command me. O'Hara's lips curved. So that's the truth. It is, Wolfe said. A man may endure vice in the world. He need not endure it in his parlor. Kramer arrived 5 minutes later with 2 detectives and the expression of a man who hates being right on Wolfe's schedule. He slapped cuffs on O'Hara, read him something formal, and marched him out. When the door shut, the house regained its natural order. Wolfe picked up his seed catalog again as if we'd been interrupted by a telemarketer. I said, He tried to turn charity into feudalism. You turned feudalism into evidence. Wolfe glanced at me. Is that your attempt at a moral epigram? Maybe. I'm warming up for New Year's. Spare me. He shifted his bulk in the chair. There will be sufficient noise without you. I went to the kitchen where Fritz was setting lunch. The smell of onions and butter was the only authority Fritz recognizes. I told him in general terms that the guests from last night would not return. He nodded once, serene. At the table, Wolfe ate his trout in silence. Halfway through, he said almost casually, "Archie, you will remind me to send Dr. Vale a note. She was helpful." I already did in my head. She'll smell the ink and decide she doesn't like being praised. Wolfe nodded. Good. She's a person who might be better than her patrons. Unlike her patrons. Unlike many patrons. Wolfe laid down his fork. It is an instructive case. Christmas invitations are designed to gather people under a fiction of goodwill. But goodwill cannot be coerced. When it is, the gathering becomes a tribunal. I chewed that with my bread. And you always like being the tribunal. I like being left in peace. Tribunal is sometimes the price. Outside the brownstone, New York went on glittering and hurrying toward December 24th with its usual blind faith. Inside, the sanctity was restored. The last invitation had been answered in the only way that mattered, and Nero Wolfe had once again demonstrated that a man doesn't need to leave his chair to move the world. He only needs to know where it will crack when pressed. I poured coffee and said, "So what are you doing Christmas Eve, boss?" He looked at me as if I'd asked whether he planned to take up boxing. "Dinner at 8, in this house, with Fritz, with you. Without surprises." Sounds like a miracle. "It is merely prudence," he said. Then, after a pause, with the faintest curl of contempt for human folly, "The world insists on inviting itself into our lives. Wisdom is learning when to refuse, and courage is enforcing the refusal." I grinned into my cup. "Merry Christmas, Nero Wolfe." "Eat your lunch," he said, and that was as close to a benediction as he ever gets.